The makers of Zelda recently pushed back against a return to form for the Zelda series. This led to an outcry from some fans who are worried Nintendo isn't willing to listen to what they have to say. If classic-style dungeons won't make a comeback, what will? If the next game doesn't take place in the same Hyrule, where will it take place? Honestly, we're scared that Nintendo is going to mess up the next Zelda game, so we went above their heads in order to get our perfect Zelda game. It's official. The next Zelda will have a whole new world for players to explore. So what will that look like? Tears of the Kingdom does a great job at making its towns feel lived in, but you have to admit there are a lot of places that are just empty, with nothing to do except admire the view and collect a couple Korok seeds. Don't get me wrong, it's a great view, but just because it's the next game doesn't mean they have to double the map size. It will be an opportunity to focus on the people of Hyrule, not just Hyrule itself. As pretty as it is, the look of modern Hyrule is that of lifeless ruins, and I love the vibe that liminal, abandoned spaces give off. That said, Zelda games are masterpieces of atmosphere, but arguably, and this is just my opinion, less can be more. When every town in the game is Lavender Town, it takes away some of that specialness. I'm making some good points over here. Do you hear what I said about the ruins?
All right, my turn. Let me have some good points.
Okay.
These are games where Hyrule is rebuilding. What if the next game shows us a Hyrule that's thriving? We've never seen a Hyrule at its peak. My favorite part of RPGs are honestly the people. I'd love to see more complex NPCs with dialogue options that actually have consequences. Imagine multiple distinct cities, each with their own history and culture, teeming with NPCs who mean more to Link than just a recycled fetch quest.
Look at the time! We gotta get this in the mail. Santa's workshop closes in 10 minutes. Let's go!
We know open world is here to stay, but in the next game, I'd like to see a little more structure. Instead of dropping players into an endless sandbox from the get-go, they could combine the linear storytelling with open world, like many games do.
Should we give some examples?
Santa loves examples.
Elden Ring. In Elden Ring, you either need an excess of skill or to have sufficiently leveled up in order to move on to another part of the world map. This lets the world still feel large, but not overwhelming, and gives players the freedom to explore without really restricting anything at all. Super hard enemies are strategically placed in late game areas, pretty much corralling the player to where they need to go.
Here's another option. Twilight Princess is a great game with an open world that gives access to new areas through items and quests that build upon the areas you've already been to. A staple of The Legend of Zelda used to be seeing something in the overworld and knowing you needed to come back to it later after you unlocked a certain item or cleared a certain dungeon. With Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, that's no longer the case since the game is designed to be played in any order.
They could even do something wild with the next Zelda game by anchoring Link's progression through the world to his advancement of the story. Baldur's Gate 3 gives players access to one huge chunk of the world map for Act 1, and each new chunk of the map is unlocked as the player advances the plot. I'd love it if the choices Link makes in each section of the next game make a huge difference in how the story unfolds going forward. In theory, the player could get different endings each time. This would even make sense since many branches of the Zelda timeline depend on alternate endings. I do think Nintendo would be scared to do that, since they wouldn't want to have a bad ending, but there doesn't necessarily need to even be a bad ending, there could just be multiple good endings. That said, one of the timeline splits is literally called The Hero is Defeated, so maybe they should do something bold and include a bad ending in the next game.
It should be dark and gritty,
Cute and pretty and full
realistic
of flowers
themes,
and
heavy undertones.
And
And
it. Wait,
what did you say?
Nintendo has a lot of options for how the next game should look. Fans have been happy with everything from Toon Link and the cel-shaded style of Wind Waker all the way to the moody realism of Twilight Princess. All Zelda games exist somewhere on this spectrum.
All 3D Zelda games, that is. People would love to see a new 2D Zelda, and I would personally pay good money for a modern Nintendo game with pixel art. But for the purposes of this video, Sam and I are going to advocate for opposing art styles that we want to see in the next 3D Zelda game. Part of what makes a Zelda game so fun to play are the visuals. Some of my favorite moments from any Zelda game are admiring the sunset over Hyrule Field, imagining a life for myself in the world laid before me, or just vibing out to the moody temples and dungeons. I'm going to speak for people who have been waiting decades to get a game rendered in a, quote, realistic style. I have to admit, there's a part of me waiting to play a version of Zelda that looks like what we all imagined Ocarina of Time looked like in our heads. Twilight Princess was a step in this direction, but at the same time, this isn't it. I would love to play a Zelda game that I can take a little more seriously. One of my favorite obsessions with these games is the lore. It scratches an itch to think about how all of the games relate to one another, and if Nintendo could tap into that market and let themselves take Zelda a little bit more seriously too, I'd love that. They could even hire someone to draft a dedicated lore, similar to how Elden Ring enlisted George R.R. Martin.
Our modern Zelda games have been gorgeous, but I would really love if the next in the series chose a bold, stylized look. What I really want is a game that looks as if it was produced by Studio Ghibli. And it may be a pipe dream, but this is my video and I am allowed to be delusional. All of the lush environments and whimsical characters of Hyrule feel quintessentially Miyazaki already, so what would be the trouble of mixing them together? Close your eyes and picture a hand-drawn Link rushing through the My Neighbor Totoro style forest and tell me that that does not sound magical. I know some fans are hesitant of having another cartoony Zelda because they don't want it to feel like a kid's game, but this style of animation does not feel childish. Anyone who has seen Grave of Fireflies knows that Miyazaki's style, while it can be adorable and fun, can also be heart-wrenching and dark, which is perfect for the Zelda franchise. Like I said, I know it's a pipe dream for a million dumb logistical reasons, but these two franchises share so much thematically, I long to see them mixed together.
But that's just us. What kind of art style would you like to see for the next Zelda game?
Okay, what can I get for you?
Hey, could I get a meat skewer?
Oh, what, sorry?
Meat skewer?
The biggie bag?
Speaking of meat, Link has had his fair share of adventuring partners, some more helpful than others. Hey! While The Legend of Zelda has been a massively influential franchise, it's time for Zelda to get inspired by the games inspired by Zelda, because by comparison, Zelda companions feel very two-dimensional, flat, and boring. That's just my opinion.
I really want better companions in the next game. We're talking tragic backstories. We're talking companion quest. We're talking affinity scales. I feel bad for Link. He deserves a true companion to share his adventure with who's more than just a glorified assistant or a power-up.
And whoever that companion is, Link and them should kiss.
I'm tired of being teased by the creators of the Zelda franchise, Link and Zelda. Are they a couple or aren't they? Apparently it's up to everyone's imagination, but what if it wasn't?
When I was growing up, there was this little old thing called an OTP.
I truthfully don't know if Nintendo has the Hinox guts to implement a full romance mechanic in a future Zelda game, but they could get away with the smooch at the end if they really wanted to. It doesn't even have to be between Link and Zelda. I'm just gonna say, a Legend of Zelda dating simulator would sell out in about 5 seconds.
All right, post office is just down the street. Could you read it back to me, please?
Here, this is what I have.
What is that there? A little what? Is that Triforce having a birthday party?
Who's to say what crackpot game mechanic the next Zelda game will center around?
Another new ability called Ultra Hand.
There's no way to tell. All we know is what we don't want in the next game. We're ready to move away from weapon degradation. Look, it's kind of a bummer when you work really hard to get a rare weapon and it breaks pretty much right away. It actually makes me not want to use those weapons. Another thing is the sheer number of collectibles. A part of Zelda has always been hidden collectibles, but no one is trying to collect 1,000 Korok seeds or hundreds of photos for Robbie. Do it yourself, bro. It just makes the completionist in me feel really bad. Give me quality over quantity. Unique challenges with powerful rewards, not just a medallion or a paraglider fabric.
I wouldn't even mind so many collectibles if they empowered players with the means of tracking them more easily. You know Santa loves examples, so take Tears of the Kingdom. There's no way to track which monster you've slain, just how many, so you have to use stamps, but since there's only one monster stamp, I end up combining stamps to indicate certain monsters. That makes sense, right? but all of a sudden I'm out of stamps. Small quality of life improvements could go a long way in making collectibles feel more meaningful.
I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea. You'd be hard-pressed to find a Zelda game that I don't think is a masterpiece. That said, there are some nitpicks that Nintendo can work on. I don't want to watch the same cutscene over and over again. The shrines, giving Korux to Hetsu, praying for heart containers, upgrading clothes with the Great Fairy, imprisoning war, secret stones. It can get very, very tedious.
Right? It feels like the last two Zelda games were built for single playthroughs. They brutalize completionist players, resources run out quick, and it can feel like work to backtrack and restock, especially when you have to upgrade 10 armor sets in a row.
I love Zelda, but after a while, everything just feels so slow. The next Zelda game might be a good chance to bring back classic items like the Pegasus boots. Let me earn items that make the game easier the more you play.
Any last notes for Santa? I think he's gonna like what we have so far.
Should we say something a little controversial?
Let's end on a few of our hottest takes. These are things that we want that we think a lot of people might not. I want to see magic make a comeback in the next Zelda game. It used to be such a staple of the Zelda franchise, but it's been sorely missed for years now. I would be so pumped to hotspot between swords and spells while fending off a group of moblins in the next game.
I, for one, would love to see some more challenging combat. I think we got a taste of it with the Ganon fight at the end of Tears, and I love Flurry Rush and being able to parry. Each new Zelda game introduces new fighting styles. I say bring it on.
I'm curious to hear if I'm in the minority, but I was a fan of how Link collected hearts in the classic Zelda titles. Call me old-fashioned, but I'm not too interested in hunting for resources and cooking recipes. Just give me a sword that doesn't break and a patch of grass that somehow has hearts in it, and I'll be happy.
I'm gonna say it. I am ready for Linkle to make an appearance in a mainline Zelda game. Link is supposed to be a link between the game and the player. Somewhere along the way, he became his own character, which is fine. I love Link. But it could be cool to see a small amount of character customization in the next game.
Okay, there's the post office. There's a fly in here. Guess we'll never get our perfect Zelda game.
I have a feeling we will.